Good morning. We're here today to talk about a man who, in many ways, needs no introduction. A man whose work speaks for itself. A private man who is making an incredibly public impact. A man who delivered the goods. Today, we are inspired to share his story. We're driven to speak to his work, and we're called to shine a light on his legacy. The legacy of Don Wood.
Grit, tenacity, perseverance, hard work, pride in what you do, love of what you do. He just absolutely radiated it when you were around him.
He was a passionate guy.
Innovative, creative, caring,
energetic,
enthusiasm.
He was ambitious, goal-oriented. He was independent, tenacious, industrious.
Aggressive, driven.
He did a lot of unconventional stuff.
Very creative in solving issues, solving problems.
hearty. He had the heartiest laugh. I mean, when Don laughed, it filled the room, honestly.
As a young man, Don Wood endured a hard-scrabble life. He learned early that success, however he defined it, should never be taken for granted. Success was something to be earned. Don's hardship shaped his resilience. His challenges planted the seeds of his drive, of his motivation, of his persistence.
He had a difficult upbringing, and that instilled in Don a sense of real pride and accomplishments. That, I told you I could do it, and I did it.
And he was a little boy. He's born in 32. During the Depression, I remember he had some toys around the house when we were younger, and he kept them until the day he died, that he had made himself when he was a little boy, because they didn't have enough money. And so it's things like that. You don't know what shapes your personality when you're young and what comes out in you and what doesn't.
Don's mother died when he was 6, and he went into foster care for a couple of years. And of course, we don't know how he would have turned out if she didn't pass, but he became very restless after that, and very much a person who wanted to be in control of their own life.
He's told me that when he was in Des Moines dating my mom, and he was like 19 and she was 18, they hadn't got married, and he would drive past a manufacturing company and he would tell her, honey, one day I'm going to own one of these. Manufacturing is the backbone of the American economy, and I'm going to own one.
And it was that was deeply rooted in his persona. This notion of I am going to be something, I'm going to build something, I'm going to do something.
There's certain things that you determine that if I don't act on this now and I die tomorrow, I'm going to consider it a wasted effort. So I think Don's passion was very driven, internally driven, about I have to find out if I can do this or not. And I'm sure there was never any doubt in his mind, but he didn't have the evidence to prove that he could do it either.
Don Wood was relentless. He believed that leadership required sacrifice. And yes, he sacrificed. Of course, he never asked anyone to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. He was a salesman, and he believed that sales skills were the greatest skills, present in every job, in every vocation. This was a man who walked the talk and nailed the sale.
Don never lacked for energy. He was either on or he was sleeping. He competed, he was prepared, he was committed, he was passionate, and he'd get up in front of our guys. And I could remember him doing one-arm push-ups in front of everybody. He said, an old guy like me, and he'd pop down on the floor and knock off 7 or 8 push-ups, which blew everybody's mind. But he was so passionate about what he did, and he always had good ideas.
But he was a dynamo. I mean, he was moving all the time, and he was smart and had a great personality. And he was doing exactly what he should have been doing. And he did it very successfully.
He was never a guy about money, ever. So he never worked hard to make money. He worked hard, of course, to make the ends meet. But it was never a passion of, I'm going to be rich in 10 years if I do X, Y, and Z. And even when he could afford to spend more money and have nicer stuff, he didn't.
Don bought his jackets at JCPenney. He still cut coupons. He was eating a can of tuna at his desk, even though he'd been invited to have lunch on the dime of Ivy Tech.
What that taught him, and the message that I heard from Don, was that empowered him. It gave him options. Money wasn't the driver. It didn't buy you happiness. It didn't buy you joy, but it provided opportunity to do or make certain choices because of that.
I think he had not been coached or mentored. I think he just saw a better way. And he was always so confident and so strong. And so I think we moved a lot, because I think a lot of times it put him in between a rock and a hard place with his employers. And so I think a lot of times employers said, you might want to just consider going somewhere else. Don stayed employed by a company in South Fort Wayne. And on the side, we would talk about, maybe we can make T-slotted extrusions and sell them. And that's the 80-20 product today. When we bought from the competitors, we knew we needed to be in the business because they were no good at what they did. And there was space in the marketplace for someone to do this really well. And Don, his strength as a salesman, he had 57 years old. He'd been all over the nation for his career, interacting with industrial automation distributors. So he knew all the principles of the distribution in key markets around the country.
It's rare that you have an engineering mindset and a salesperson's mindset in the same human body. And I think that was one of the reasons Don was so successful.
And he took every nickel he had and put it into a company that was unproven. I mean, that was an organically grown operation. It wasn't something we bought and acquired. And that takes a lot of guts to do that.
His sons, that were obviously a huge part of the success, they were very important to me as well, as each one were unique and different in their own, but all had that same blood running through their veins that helped instill those habits and philosophies and characteristics throughout.
So Don had all the connections, and John and I were responsible for the whole operation side of things, manufacturing operations, so on and so forth. And God just put us in the right alignment because we were sort of in our sweet spots.
And they were trying to expand the business to the west, and they needed somebody to help out with getting the product off the ground. And they needed somebody that knew how to prospect, demonstrate, and close. And here I am. And I came at the right price. I had the right bloodline. Everything was perfect. And so they set me up, and I started helping them.
And if you think about it, growing a company, washing, big extrusions in a 5-gallon pickle bucket in his garage to, ultimately founding one of the most successful companies. He knew what he was doing. Yeah, he knew what he was doing.
My mom and my dad started this business, and my mom was very integral in there. She was in there every day helping with invoicing and labeling products and stuff. Well, she had heart issues. Ultimately, she went in for a bypass, and she died on the table a year and a half into the business. It devastated my dad. Lots of money had gone out, and here his partner, after 35 plus years of marriage, she's gone. They had driven around Des Moines together, dreaming of this day, and they were on the cusp of it, and she wasn't part of it. But he never gave up.
Don Wood had a way with words. He shared his point of view through sayings known as Donisms. Donisms could inspire those around him or challenge them. Donisms might produce delight or demand reflection. They could enlighten or provoke. Don's words were unforgettable, shareable, enduring. As the man said, you gotta learn it to teach it.
obviously you look for good attitudes in people, but you also recognize that your attitude is a choice. Everything that you think or say or do is a choice. And if you choose a good attitude, you're going to become a positive person. You're going to look for the possibilities. And so he looked for that in employees. He looked at that in our daily tasks. Did we approach them with, oh, here's another thing I got to do and I really don't enjoy? Or do you jump in, get it done with a positive attitude because you knew how it was going to contribute to the company or to your teammates? And so that permeated our culture. And so one of the Donisms was think like a customer. If you're faced with a situation and you're not quite sure how to react to it or what to do, put yourself in the customer's shoes. What would they want? Is this the right thing to do? And if it is, you do it.
You could take him at face value, but he always enticed you to look beyond the energy, look beyond the passion, look beyond the bluster, and that was really the gold that could be mined by an individual.
As simple as some of the Donisms might be, as simple as our business process or philosophy is, he was still a very complicated man.
To be in relationships with other people requires empathy, listening, caring. So in a sense, everything is selling. If that's how you are interacting with a stranger, you should also act that way with people that you work next to at work or the people you share the dinner table with empathy. And yeah, so Don modeled that.
Don never made assumptions based upon appearances, because I think his humble beginnings and where he came from wouldn't allow him to make, that was just not part of his repertoire. How he judged people's character and who they were is how they worked, work ethic, and whether they want their attitude. Those were two primary roles. And that's how he would then make an assumption regarding whether someone was going to be successful.
Don absolutely abhorred the idea that the employer-employee relationship was a transaction. He believed that it should be based on trust.
He was warm to everybody, I think, and unless you weren't doing your job, then he wasn't warm to you. There wasn't much of a gray area there,
I thought Don wanted to help people, wanted to give people a chance. And I know as many people failed as were successful because he was a hard driver. He was no nonsense. I'll give you an opportunity, but I expect you to, follow the rules.
He wanted to make sure we were never content. Don't rest. Keep drive. Keep that hunger. And by finding the right motivation to inspire you for what needed to be done, right, wrong, good, or bad, that was his unique tool.
What was really important, I think, for Don is this concept of pack your own chute. Pack your own chute meant that from an educational perspective, if I had the opportunity as an employee to be able to go and get education or training, that was something that no one could ever take from me.
We started making some money after a few years of being in the business. And this is a crack up. I was probably 32 or so, and we've been poor for 3 years. And so my brother John and I said, hey, Dad, isn't it time for us to have raises now? Can we have a raise or whatever? And, and he says, no. He says, we're just getting started making money. We're going to need this money in the future to grow. And if I give it to you guys in the way of salaries now, and he included himself, if I give it to you in the way of salaries now and then tomorrow we need it to buy a truckload of aluminum, that's a big mistake. He says, so we're putting the money in the bank and we're going to continue to do that until we get to a point where we know that it's not going to hurt us by taking a raise. That was really big for me. I had never thought that way ever before.
So you lead, but you also look at your employees, your stakeholders, your customers, your banker, your financial partners, your distributors. You treat those folks like they are partners, like they are your best friends. You honor the golden rule. you end up living that, and it becomes a part of your values system, and then that's recognized by the people who you work with. You can be, as he was, friendly, fair, and firm. And I'm sure there's some people that, oh gosh, Don's gotten on me again, but there was respect, always respect.
Don Wood was a well-read man. Though he did not pursue a degree in higher education, his commitment to lifelong learning was unwavering. He constantly sought new information, new insight, not only to gain a competitive advantage, and make no mistake, Don was quite competitive, but also to keep complacency at bay.
Don had a bookshelf in his office, and if you looked at that bookshelf, the majority of books were not on advanced manufacturing. The majority of those books were on leadership and skill building.
He loved to read about other leaders, and he said, and I think it was because he understood that other leaders had the same opportunities, thoughts, trepidation or challenges that he had. And so I think he felt like I can learn from their experiences.
He cared about training, he cared about teamwork, he cared about talent formation, and he cared about technology.
Because he would always say, I'm a salesman first, I'm an entrepreneur second, I'm a manufacturer third. And that was really important. But they weren't independent of each other. They all worked together.
It really goes back to him being a constant learner in anything from the book clubs to trainings that we inspire. I can even remember one time on a Saturday, we went to a local hardware store because they were giving a seminar on something like do-it-yourself guttering, how to install your own guttering. And they had samples, and they had hands-on, and they had literature, and Don was like, this is awesome. And I'm going, man, this is a Saturday, and we're learning how to put up gutter. Wow. But it wasn't that. It was, how can we learn those traits or those characteristics or those tactics to apply to what we do and achieve our ultimate goal?
Any place where he could get an inkling of an idea that we might be able to use to make our company better, he was all in.
Well, indeed, if you just dug in and went to the library and got a book out, and just read about it, you were able to, do a lot more than you thought you could do. And once you own that knowledge, it's yours forever.
Don would always say is you always learn something from every interaction, good or bad. And I think he internalized so many of those things that he experienced, be it the process, be it the people, be it the product, the method, the system.
I mean, I know that the Army really weighed on him heavily in terms of his learning. He was absolutely floored, knocked out beyond anything, how you could get 30 strangers together and get them all marching in step and speaking out of the same language within 12 weeks.
As he got older, later on in life, he recognized the value of training, especially career training for tradespeople.
He loved to tell stories. And students want to know stories. I mean, they want to put it in context, a reality. And so that's how he connected. Students love to take tours of 80/20, and Don always led the tours. And so that became sort of a hallmark, was getting a tour by Don Wood of 80/20.
It was an opportunity to create a pipeline for 80/20 employees. I think the more strategic aspect about it is Don understood that there was an opportunity for people to grow and better themselves, and by grow and bettering themselves, they would be an opportunity to be more impactful throughout the entirety of the different aspects of their life. And I had the opportunity to come across Don's speech that he gave at a commencement at Ivy Tech.
He didn't have a degree, but when he was up on stage wearing the cap and the robe, shaking hands with these kids, and he says, Dave, man, the look on their face when they walk across that and shake my hand for that diploma, I couldn't believe it. So there's a side of him that he never experienced on his own, but he certainly didn't miss the gratitude that and the excitement and the sense of accomplishment that was coming across the graduates.
As part of that ceremony, they gave Don an honorary degree. And that honorary degree is something that he had on his wall and on his shelf all the time.
He liked success, and he saw these students. Here is one success, an accomplishment that they have all achieved, and that not a lot of people do. And he wanted to be a part of that success.
And I could see him as a legacy, really wanted to help people, help them get started, help people that don't have anything get started with a good idea. I had the benefit of having a great education. Don didn't have any of that. And he was always, I say defensive, but on the other hand, it actually served him well. It was a little bit of the Horatio Algier spirit that was ingrained in him that made him say, I'm going to succeed one way or another.
Don believed that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. That idea sums up the work of the Don Wood Foundation, too. The Don Wood Foundation prepares learners from across Northeast Indiana to make the most of opportunities that are available to them. Along the way, these learners lead, give back, and help others, just like Don did.
Yeah, Don was very, very driven by giving back to the community in the way that the Don Wood Foundation is living today. His involvement with Ivy Tech and Junior Achievement and other organizations that were helping people grow and learn in the trades and identify and create careers in these trades. Don was way for that. And after his passing, and then I saw what happened with the Don Wood Foundation, I was so pleased. I was so pleased and so happy that he did what he did.
One thing I think that Don would have been motivated by was a return on investment. So in many ways, I think he viewed his philanthropy as being an investment in other people. And so the return then becoming, what do these individuals then go out and achieve?
So if anything, you remember the individuals for their success, but more importantly, the habits and the path that they laid before you.
And so when I stepped away from the day-to-day operations, I took a 2-month sabbatical in 2021. And I looked at my career and I looked at that and I said, you know what? Don gave me an incredible opportunity. How am I going to continue to pour back into the legacy of this man that gave me that opportunity?
I can't imagine a Don Wood Foundation without Patrick Bushing being a part of it. I think that's because he really was there from the very beginning. I don't think without his coaching and guidance and leadership alongside of John Wood, and then the partnership that he and I were able to build early on and even still in our working relationship together, I don't think that would be successful if you didn't have someone who was like Patrick Bushing in that role.
He was a very good judge of character and was not going to just fritter money away or give money where he didn't feel like it was going to be well utilized for the purposes by which he deemed necessary and appropriate, which that is, those are the best kind of donors, in my estimation, or philanthropic, because they know what they want, they can tell you what they want, and then it's up to the organization to make it happen.
One of the things that we believe he wanted to accomplish was, one, seeing more people become lifelong learners and develop a pathway for self-made success, but two, help solve that problem in the workforce development space around the need for high quality talent.
We do not want to be a foundation where you just mail in an application, it goes into a big black box, and then you may or may not hear from us. Don was not that kind of a person.
We talk about the efficiency of giving. I don't think he would have been delighted to think about lots of paperwork or red tape or bureaucracy or challenges in and receiving those grant funds. So one of the things that we have tried to do is construct a grant process that really walks alongside of our grantees and says, just come to us with a couple of ideas. They don't have to be fully baked.
We essentially took what Don had from a corporation and we applied it into a private foundation, not-for-profit realm. We are absolutely dedicated to be able to come alongside potential grantees and community members and say, hey, what is your idea? How can we do, how can we make it better? How can we impact that?
The Venn diagram, it overlaps the three key areas of our funding. So it looks at leadership, entrepreneurship, and advanced manufacturing. And if you think about where those three circles intersect, in the very middle is truly a sweet spot for the Don Wood Foundation.
I think the opportunity for the foundation is not only to align with donor intent, but also find a way that the foundation continue to work forward into the future with the spirit and the gusto and the zest that Don Wood had.
Our country's built on entrepreneurship and people stepping up and saying, well, I can do that. Don obviously leaped at the chance and developed a wonderful product, supported it and stayed with it till he passed away. So, yeah, we need more Don Woods running around.
I can't help but smile every time I see something like that and thinking, Don, by golly, you've done it again. So, I'm proud to have known him personally as well as I did. I think I was blessed in that respect. And he's just one of the really good people. He was good in his heart. I know he struggled with a lot of things along the way, but by golly, he lived a full life. And I saw him a couple of days before he died, and we had a good talk. Talked to a review of the old times, and we both had a few laughs. Very special guy.
I thought he was a most interesting man. In many ways, he was sort of a Renaissance guy. Here is science, technology, engineering, and math, but here's music on this end. He enjoyed storytelling. He really had a multitude of interests. And then to have him develop in that way from such a young age on his own, I think speaks to his strength of character. And he loved these communities. I mean, he did. It was something that he wanted to give back to. And I think he's done so more than fourfold through the development of the foundation.
I think Don wanted to make his mark in the world, and he found Fort Wayne to be the place to do it. And I think he felt very good about the life he had lived, and I think he felt he'd taken care of his family, and I think he felt he had taken care of his community, and I think he was at peace with his God, and I think it was a life well lived. So I think we can be proud and pleased that we had Don Wood come to Fort Wayne. So all to the good.
Legacy doesn't write itself. It's born from a lifetime of difficult decisions. It's the sum of 1,000 courageous actions. It's the ultimate result of a winning attitude. Together, let's shape a better tomorrow with all the passion and all the pride and all the promise that we learned about today. Thank you.